Welcome, everybody, to the 21st episode of the Oreninc podcast series. I'm joined again by Mickey Fulp, the Mercenary Geologist. Mickey, as always, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me once again, Kai.
It's fantastic to have you, and I always appreciate the banter here. And I'm going to start us off, as always, with the Oreninc Index and what we've seen here in the markets for the last couple of weeks. And, people were expecting a post-PDAC slump, and so far, because we didn't have a pre-PDAC rally, we don't really have a slump right now, so it's just business as usual, if you want to say it like that. And one thing we've noticed, actually, is a couple of financings that have been, or bigger financings, actually, in size, that sort of gave a lift to the Oreninc Index right post-PDAC, which was the RTG financing of roughly $43 million and the Millennial Lithium financing of $24 million that helped our index sort of jump to 52 points from an almost all-time low the week prior or before PDAC. We've come off since then. We haven't seen any bigger financings in the last week. I think the biggest one we've seen was roughly $10 million. And our index sort of came crashing down again to 26 points, which is actually really low. We haven't seen a bought deal last week. Only one brokered financing for a measly $700,000, which is quite embarrassing. So,
well, makes you wonder why they used a broker.
Yes, I've no. Maybe they had one investor who was interested, who approached his broker. I have no idea, but that's all we've seen. That's all, folks, from the Oreninc Index funds. Like, we haven't seen much. There hasn't been a lot of activity. The total number of financings is still very low, and it hasn't changed much in recent weeks. So maybe the gold price, and one thing Mickey and I are going to talk about here in a second as well, is the Fed rate hikes and the impact on the gold price. Maybe that's having a positive effect on things. What do you think, Mickey?
Well, generally you would think with interest rates rising, it would be bad for gold because you can't get interest holding gold. But the gold prices rallied post FOMC meeting with our new Fed Chairman, Jerome Powell. As we speak this morning, it's at 1355, and it's just basically gone up and up and up over the last 4 days. There's one extenuating circumstance that happened overnight, and that's the Saudis shot down 7 Yemen missiles overnight, so that certainly has weighed in on geopolitical risk. But you got to be happy we're pushing up toward that 1360 resistance again, and we'll see if it can even get there. It hasn't gotten there the last couple of times, but it keeps testing this, and some point, I think we're both pretty confident it will push on through.
Yeah, no, but I'm just looking at my watch list here as well, and I do see quite a bit of green, but nothing outrageous. I think you mentioned it once in an interview, or we have spoken about it before as well. Like, we always seem to be taking 2 steps forward, but 1 step back. Like, when I'm looking at the share prices here, it's nothing. I don't know. It's like it's 1% up. Like Kirkland Lake Gold, I'm just looking at them. They're up not even 1% right now. I don't know. The market is lacking a certain enthusiasm right now. Maybe it's too cautious and trying to see what gold is doing.
Well, yeah, it's certainly lacking any enthusiasm at all for gold stocks. But sometimes the gold price front runs stocks, and sometimes it's the other way around. It is of concern to me, especially in my bailiwick, which is the juniors, and there just really is no interest in junior explorers at this point.
Now, one thing we've seen as well, Goldman Sachs actually is bullish on the gold price. I'm not sure if that's a contraindicator or not, but
it just means they're long.
Yeah, hopefully they're buying. So that'd be helpful as well, obviously. Yeah. And then one thing we've discussed briefly as well before starting to record this here is the oil price has been on a tear as well. So obviously you mentioned the Yemen missiles being shot down over Saudi Arabia might have an impact of that, but the oil price, go ahead and
that drove the gold price or oil price, pardon me, the oil price overnight to a plus 3-year high. We're reaching levels that we really haven't seen consistently since early December of 2014. Now, we did go briefly above 66 bucks in early January. Uh, WTI went to 66.20 overnight, but it's come down over a buck. It's a little bit more than 65 bucks right now. But there's really some strong geopolitical events and strong fundamentals in this market. We already mentioned the Saudis versus the Yemenis. But also we got to keep in mind that Venezuela is failing. Its production is going down significantly on a month-over-month basis. Mexico, it looks like they may elect a socialist president, and I think the election is in June, so that would certainly affect their production because he wants to roll back the Pemex privatization. Um,
Okay, I didn't know
you
about that
know,
one. Okay.
U.S. shale is winning. We're now at 10.4 million barrels a day and setting a record production nearly every week. One thing we should look at though is demand. Worldwide demand remains very strong. We're growing something on the order of 1.5% per year, and this has uh, been unabated since we came out of the global economic crisis in 2010. So, with strong demand, OPEC maintaining their production cuts, the oil market looks quite bullish going forward.
I was kind of interesting because one thing you mentioned, like the U.S. is on a tear as well in terms of production, and when the oil price crashed 3 years ago, everybody mentioned that the U.S. was the main reason for the oil price crashing, and now oil price the production has been increasing constantly since, and the oil price is increasing. Nobody mentioned that argument anymore, so I find that quite interesting in
Yeah,
hindsight, right?
yeah, I think it's there was great hand wringing when the oil price crashed, and it started in August of 2014. And get this, over a 4 month interval, the oil price dropped $10 a month. So in August it went from plus 100 to 90 to 80 to 70 to 60 by the beginning of 2015. So it really was a crash. But like I say, demand has remained strong. U.S. gasoline demand is at record highs right now. So the electric vehicle revolution is certainly not
No,
affecting
no, and
our use or our economy. Everybody's buying big SUVs here,
yeah.
unabated. So,
No, I was in Arizona last week and I saw, I think, I'm not sure if it was in Nevada or in Las Vegas or in Arizona, but I saw $2.29 gas. Who's going to
yeah,
switch,
okay.
right?
Yeah,
So,
gas is starting to go up a bit, but it's still very low, and it's always lower here than any place that I travel in the world except maybe Mexico.
yeah, no, that's true. And I'm quite curious to see what kind of impact it will have on the U.S. growth numbers. Because I always call the oil price, or the drop in oil price, the people's, or quantitative easing for the people, right? So, and especially I think in the U.S. that holds especially true.
Yep.
So one thing as well we've seen as well is a drop off in prices of pretty much all base metals. They're all down 7 to 8%. Zinc even over 10%. Do you have a great like do you think that Trump's tariff or trade wars has anything to do with that?
I think it has a lot to do with it. I can really find no fundamental reasons why the prices have dropped. Uh, copper's down from 326. It's now below $3, so that's nearly approaching anyway a 10% drop. Zinc's off 10%, lead's off 10%, and I really think it is this bully pulpit and cage rattling that Trump is doing with the tariffs. I seriously doubt if there's going to be a trade war. And we found, I mean, it came out first and it was steel and aluminum tariffs all over the world, and now everybody's exempted except for the Chinese. So really, this is, I think, a negotiating strategy for Trump to bust the Chinese back a bit, especially with respect to stealing of intellectual property, and that's of real concern in the United States.
Yeah, no, just as a side note, I find it quite amusing how everybody's celebrating or patting each other on the back, like for sort of evading the tariffs from the U.S. Well, it's just that it's
Yeah.
I just that just makes me laugh because it seems like people didn't get the joke there, and
Yeah. Well, you know, they called Reagan the great communicator, and I think uh, if Trump is successful, and we'll see if he is, he will go down as the great negotiator.
I think so. It seems like it right now, at least. I just saw by chance at the press conference of the Australian Prime Minister, and he was the happiest I've ever seen him. So it's
Well, yeah, because iron ore is a big part of the Aussie economy, a
so,
huge part.
no, that's one thing we haven't done in a while is wrap up our podcast here with our number of the week, and I'd like to do that again this week because I think it's quite entertaining, and we always have two really good and interesting numbers. And Mickey, why don't you start us off with yours this week?
All right. Well, I've been sitting on this one for a while for the right time to roll it out, and it seems apropos today. And that's less than 3.5%. And that number is gasoline as a percent of annual post tax income in the United States. So we always hear a lot from Americans about gas prices rising, but there's probably a reason we're still all driving our big pickups and SUVs.
Interesting, because we touched on that just earlier. So $2.29 a gallon. That's
Yep.
yeah, that's a big
So
factor there.
it really is a pittance. Uh, Fuel costs in the United States compared to everything else, outgoing expenses in an average household income.
No, no, definitely. That's where it's quantitative. The cheap oil and gas prices are quantitative easing for the people. That's my opinion on that one. So,
That's a good way to put it.
so my numbers, like I'm getting to be known for it, always having a little different number. So mine is actually 7-1 because Germany's playing Brazil again tonight. It's the first
Oh,
time since the World Cup when
yeah.
we beat them at home 7-1. So that's why that's my number of the week, and I think the
Well,
Brazilians are going to be quite
I
interested in
might,
winning today's test or friendly. So
yeah. If I hope you're not taking the over on the over under on that spread. So,
nah, I'm quite cautious when it comes to the betting part there. Nah, Mickey, thank you so much for joining us this week again. We'll do this again as always every other week. So 2 weeks from now we'll do another one.
okay.
You have a wonderful day. Thanks for taking the time, and I'll talk to you very soon.
Okay. You have a wonderful evening, Kai.